Chapters 6 through 9 of Book 2 of On Generation and Corruption by Aristotle. Translated by Harold Joachim. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jeffrey Edwards. Chapter 6. As for those who agree with Empedocles that the elements of body are more than one, so that they are not transformed into one another, one may well wonder in what sense it is open to them to maintain that the elements are comparable. Yet Empedocles says, quote, "For these are all not only equal." Close quote. If, 1. It is meant that they are comparable in their amount, all the comparables must possess an identical something whereby they are measured. If, e.g., 1 pint of water yields 10 of air, both are measured by the same unit, and therefore both were from the first an identical something. On the other hand, suppose, 2, they are not comparable in their amount, in the sense that so much of the one yields so much of the other, but comparable in power of action, a pint of water, e.g., having a power of cooling equal to that of 10 pints of air. Even so, they are comparable in their amount, though not qua amount, but qua so much power. There is also 3, a third possibility. Instead of comparing their powers by the measure of their amount, they might be compared as terms in a correspondence, e.g., as x is hot, so correspondingly y is white. But correspondence, though it means equality in the quantum, means similarity in a quale. Thus it is manifestly absurd that the simple bodies, though they are not transformable, are comparable not merely as corresponding, but by a measure of their powers, i.e., that so much fire is comparable with many times that amount of air, as being equally or similarly hot. For the same thing, if it be greater in amount, will, since it belongs to the same kind, have its ratio correspondingly increased. A further objection to the theory of Empedocles is that it makes even growth impossible unless it be increase by addition. For his fire increases by fire, quote, and earth increases its own frame, and ether increases ether, close quote. These, however, are cases of addition, but it is not by addition that growing things are believed to increase, and it is far more difficult for him to account for the coming to be which occurs in nature, for the things which come to be by natural process all exhibit in their coming to be a uniformity either absolute or highly regular, while any exceptions, any results which are in accordance neither with the invariable nor with the general rule, are products of chance and luck. Then what is the cause determining that man comes to be from man, that wheat, instead of an olive, comes to be from wheat, either invariably or generally? Are we to say, bone comes to be if the elements be put together in such and such a manner? For, according to his own statements, nothing comes to be from their fortuitous consilience, but only from their consilience in a certain proportion. What then is the cause of this proportional consilience? Presumably not fire or earth, but neither is it love and strife, for the former is a cause of association only, and the latter only of dissociation. No, the cause in question is the essential nature of each thing, not merely, to quote his words, a mingling and a divorce of what has been mingled. And chance, not proportion, is the name given to these occurrences, for things can be mingled fortuitously. The cause, therefore, of the coming to be of the things which owe their existence to nature is that they are in such and such a determinate condition. And it is this which constitutes the nature of each thing, a nature about which he says nothing. What he says, therefore, is no explanation of nature. Moreover, it is this which is both the excellence of each thing and its good, whereas he assigns the whole credit to the mingling. And yet the elements, at all events, are dissociated, not by strife, but by love, since the elements are by nature prior to the deity, and they too are deities. Again, his account of motion is vague, for it is not an adequate explanation to say that love and strife set things moving, unless the very nature of love is a movement of this kind, and the very nature of strife a movement of that kind. He ought then either to have defined or to have postulated these characteristic movements, or to have demonstrated them, whether strictly or laxly, or in some other fashion. Moreover, since (a) the simple bodies appear to move naturally as well as by compulsion, i.e. in a manner contrary to nature, fire, e.g., appears to move upwards without compulsion, though it appears to move by compulsion downwards, and since (b) what is natural is contrary to that which is due to compulsion, and movement by compulsion actually occurs, it follows that natural movement can also occur in fact. Is this, then, the movement that love sets going? No, for on the contrary, the natural movement moves earth downwards, and resembles dissociation, and strife rather than love is its cause. So that in general too, love rather than strife would seem to be contrary to nature, and unless love or strife is actually setting them in motion, the simple bodies themselves have absolutely no movement or rest. But this is paradoxical, and what is more, they do in fact obviously move. For though strife dissociated, it was not by strife that the ether was borne upwards. On the contrary, sometimes he attributes its movement to something like chance. For thus, as it ran, it happened to meet them then, though often otherwise. While at other times he says it is the nature of fire to be borne upwards, but the ether, to quote his words, sank down upon the earth with long roots. With such statements, too, he combines the assertion that the order of the world is the same now in the reign of strife as it was formerly in the reign of love. What then is the first mover of the elements? What causes their motion? Presumably not love and strife. On the contrary, these are causes of a particular motion, if at least we assume that first mover to be an originative source. An additional paradox is that the soul should consist of the elements, or that it should be one of them. How are the soul's alterations to take place? How, e.g., is the change from being musical to being unmusical, or how is memory or forgetting to occur? For clearly, if the soul be fire, only such modifications will happen to it as characterize fire qua fire, while if it be compounded out of the elements, only the corporeal modifications will occur in it. But the changes we have mentioned are none of them corporeal. Chapter 7. The discussion of these difficulties, however, is a task appropriate to a different investigation. Let us return to the elements of which bodies are composed. The theories that there is something common to all the elements, and that they are reciprocally transformed, are so related that those who accept either are bound to accept the other as well. Those, on the other hand, who do not make their coming to be reciprocal, who refuse to suppose that any one of the elements comes to be out of any other taken singly, except in the sense in which bricks come to be out of a wall, are faced with a paradox. How, on their theory, are flesh and bones, or any of the other compounds to result from the elements taken together? Indeed, the point we have raised constitutes a problem even for those who generate the elements out of one another. In what manner does anything other than and beside the elements come to be out of them. Let me illustrate my meaning. Water can come to be out of fire, and fire out of water, for their substratum is something common to them both. But flesh, too, presumably, and marrow come to be out of them. How then do such things come to be? For (a) how is the manner of their coming to be conceived by those who maintain a theory like that of Empedocles? They must conceive it as composition, just as a wall comes to be out of bricks and stones, and the mixture, of which they speak, will be composed of the elements, these being preserved in it unaltered, but with their small particles juxtaposed, each to each. That will be the manner, presumably, in which flesh and every other compound results from the elements. Consequently, it follows that fire and water do not come to be out of any and every part of flesh. For instance, although a sphere might come to be out of this part of a lump of wax, and a pyramid out of some other part, it was nevertheless possible for either figure to have come to be out of either part indifferently. That is the manner of coming to be when both fire and water come to be out of any and every part of flesh. Those, however, who maintain the theory in question are not at liberty to conceive that both come to be out of flesh in that manner, but only as a stone and a brick both come to be out of a wall, viz., each out of a different place or part. Similarly, (b) even for those who postulate a single matter of their elements, there is a certain difficulty in explaining how anything is to result from two of them taken together, e.g. from cold and hot, or from fire and earth. For if flesh consists of both, and is neither of them, nor again is a composition of them in which they are preserved unaltered, what alternative is left except to identify the resultant of the two elements with their matter? For the passing away of either element produces either the other or the matter. Perhaps we may suggest the following solution. 1. There are differences of degree in hot and cold. Although, therefore, when either is fully real without qualification, the other will exist potentially. Yet, when neither exists in the full completeness of its being, but both, by combining, destroy one another's excesses, so that there exist instead a hot which, for a hot, is cold, and a cold which, for a cold, is hot, then what results from these two contraries will be neither their matter, nor either of them existing in its full reality without qualification. There will result instead an intermediate, and this intermediate, according as it is potentially more hot than cold, or vice versa, will possess a power of heating that is double or triple its power of cooling, or otherwise related thereto in some similar ratio. Thus all the other bodies will result from the contraries, or rather from the elements, insofar as these have been combined, while the elements will result from the contraries insofar as these exist potentially in a special sense, not as matter exists potentially, but in the sense explained above. And when a thing comes to be in this manner, the process is combination, whereas what comes to be in the other manner is matter. Moreover, too, contraries also suffer action in accordance with the disjunctively articulated definition established in the early part of this work. For the actually hot is potentially cold, and the actually cold potentially hot, so that hot and cold, unless they are equally balanced, are transformed into one another, and all the other contraries behave in a similar way. It is thus, then, that in the first place the elements are transformed, and that in the second place, out of the elements there come to be flesh and bones and the like, the hot becoming cold, and the cold becoming hot, when they have been brought to the mean. For at the mean is neither hot nor cold. The mean, however, is of considerable extent, and not indivisible. Similarly, it is qua reduced to a mean condition that the dry and the moist, as well as the contraries we have used as examples, produce flesh and bone, and the remaining compounds. Chapter 8. All the compound bodies, all of which exist in the region belonging to the central body, are composed of all the simple bodies. For they all contain earth, because every simple body is to be found specially and most abundantly in its own place. And they all contain water, because (a) the compound must possess a definite outline, and water alone of the simple bodies is readily adaptable in shape. Moreover, (b) earth has no power of cohesion without the moist. On the contrary, the moist is what holds it together, for it would fall to pieces if the moist were eliminated from it completely. They contain earth and water, then, for the reasons we have given, and they contain air and fire because these are contrary to earth and water, earth being contrary to air, and water to fire, insofar as one substance can be contrary to another. Now, all compounds presuppose in their coming to be constituents which are contrary to one another, and in all compounds there is contained one set of the contrasted extremes. Hence the other set must be contained in them also, so that every compound will include all the simple bodies. Additional evidence seems to be furnished by the food each compound takes, for all of them are fed by substances which are the same as their constituents, and all of them are fed by more substances than one. Indeed, even the plants, though it might be thought they are fed by one substance only, viz. By water, are fed by more than one, for earth has been mixed with the water. That is why farmers too endeavour to mix before watering. Although food is akin to the matter, that which is fed is the figure, i.e. the form, taken along with the matter. This fact enables us to understand why, whereas all the simple bodies come to be out of one another, fire is the only one of them which, as our predecessors also assert, is fed. For fire alone, or more than all the rest, is akin to the form, because it tends by nature to be borne towards the limit. Now, each of them naturally tends to be borne towards its own place, but the figure, i.e. the form, of them all is at the limits. Thus we have explained that all the compound bodies are composed of all the simple bodies. Chapter 9. Since some things are such as to come to be and pass away, and since coming to be in fact occurs in the region about the centre, we must explain the number and the nature of the originative sources of all coming to be alike. For a grasp of the true theory of any universal facilitates the understanding of its specific forms. The originative sources, then, of the things which come to be are equal in number too, and identical in kind with, those in the sphere of the eternal and primary things. For there is one in the sense of matter, and a second in the sense of form, and in addition the third originative source must be present as well. For the two first are not sufficient to bring things into being, any more than they are adequate to account for the primary things. Now cause in the sense of material origin, for the things which are such as to come to be is that which can be and not be, and this is identical with that which can come to be and pass away, since the latter, while it is at one time, at another time is not. For whereas some things are of necessity, viz. The eternal things, others of necessity are not. And of these two sets of things, since they cannot diverge from the necessity of their nature, it is impossible for the first not to be, and impossible for the second to be. Other things, however, can both be and not be. Hence, coming to be and passing away must occur within the field of that which can be and not be. This, therefore, is cause in the sense of material origin for the things which are such as to come to be, while cause, in the sense of their end, is their figure or form, and that is the formula expressing the essential nature of each of them. But the third, originative source, must be present as well, the cause vaguely dreamed of by all our predecessors, definitely stated by none of them. On the contrary, some amongst them thought the nature of the forms was adequate to account for coming to be. Thus Socrates, in the Phaedo, first blames everybody else for having given no explanation, and then lays it down that some things are forms, others participants in the forms, and that while a thing is said to be in virtue of the form, it is said to come to be, qua sharing in, to pass away, qua losing, the form. Hence he thinks that, assuming the truth of these theses, the forms must be causes both of coming to be and of passing away. On the other hand, there were others who thought the matter was adequate by itself to account for coming to be, since the movement originates from the matter. Neither of these theories, however, is sound. For if the forms are causes, why is their generating activity intermittent instead of perpetual and continuous, since there always are participants as well as forms? Besides, in some instances we see that the cause is other than the form, for it is the doctor who implants health, and the man of science who implants science, although health itself and science itself are as well as the participants, and the same principle applies to everything else that is produced in accordance with an art. On the other hand, to say that matter generates owing to its movement would be, no doubt, more scientific than to make such statements as are made by the thinkers we have been criticizing. For what alters and transfigures plays a greater part in bringing things into being, and we are everywhere accustomed in the products of nature and of art alike to look upon that which can initiate movement as the producing cause. Nevertheless, this second theory is not right either. For, to begin with, it is characteristic of matter to suffer action, i.e. to be moved, but to move, i.e. to act, belongs to a different power. This is obvious both in the things that come to be by art and in those that come to be by nature. Water does not of itself produce out of itself an animal, and it is the art, not the wood, that makes a bed. Nor is this their only error. They make a second mistake in omitting the more controlling cause, for they eliminate the essential nature, i.e. the form. And what is more, since they remove the formal cause, they invest the forces they assign to the simple bodies, the forces which enable these bodies to bring things into being, with too instrumental a character. For since, as they say, it is the nature of the hot to dissociate, of the cold to bring together, and of each remaining contrary either to act or to suffer action, it is out of such materials, and by their agency, so they maintain, that everything else comes to be and passes away. Yet, it is evident that even fire is itself moved, i.e. suffers action. Moreover, their procedure is virtually the same as if one were to treat the saw and the various instruments of carpentry as the cause of the things that come to be. For the wood must be divided if a man saws, must become smooth if he planes, and so on with the remaining tools. Hence, however true it may be that fire is active, i.e. sets things moving, there is a further point they fail to observe, viz. That fire is inferior to the tools or instruments in the manner in which it sets things moving. End of Chapter 9. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.